Did you know there is an entire hidden world living beneath your feet? One that connects to trees and recycles things and decomposes things and even makes the bread rise. Meet the fungi, it's nature's recyclers, networkers, and sometimes it even destroys life. They're not plants, they're not animals, but something entirely unique. In fact, they are their own kingdom. So, what are fungi? They are a very diverse group. They are eukaryotic organisms, which means they have a nucleus and they have membrane bound organelles, and they include things like yeasts and mold and mushrooms. But unlike plants, fungi do not perform photosynthesis. They're heterotrophs, which means they obtain their carbon from consuming other living or once living things. One of the largest fungal networks in all the world actually exists under Michigan, the state of Michigan in the United States, and it is a fungi, Armillaria gallica, and is found in the Upper Peninsula near Crystal Falls in Michigan. This thing is insane. It is genetically a single individual that lives underground, and it covers over 90 acres. It's estimated to be over 2,000 years old. Fungi are made up of multiple parts. They have the hyphae, and this is basically a thin, thread-like series of filaments that make up the body of most fungi. Their function, they grow, they spread throughout the environment or the substrate, and they primarily absorb nutrients. The mycelium is basically a mass or a network of hyphae. It acts like the main vegetative body of the fungus, and it's responsible for nutrient absorption and growth. It's often hidden underground, and it's not something that you can easily see. Now, what's interesting about the way the fungi absorb their nutrients is the fact that they essentially have to secrete digestive enzymes into the environment, and then once those nutrients are digested, then they bring them into the cells. Fungi will have septa, or singular septum, and basically that's the cross walls that divide the hyphae into different compartments, and it helps compartmentalize the hyphae while allowing the cytoplasm and the nutrients to flow through small pores. They also have cell walls, but the cell walls are not made of cellulose like plants, they're made of chitin. The fruiting body, or the sporocarp, this is the visible reproductive part. When you're looking at a mushroom, it's the part that's sticking out of the ground. I always tell my students, and maybe you have this overwhelming urge to do so as well, when you see a mushroom sticking out of the ground, what is the first thing you think about doing? If you said you feel like kicking it, I don't know why, but most human beings, when they see mushrooms sticking out of the ground, they want to kick those things. You should know that when you kick a mushroom that's sticking out of the ground, what you're really doing is kicking it right in its privates, right across the yard. Now, the spores, these are super important. They're the microscopic reproductive cells that can grow into new fungal organisms. They disperse through the air or water, or sometimes they'll attach to animals and be carried off into new locations. So as I already mentioned, the fungi digest their food extracellularly, and they act in important roles in the ecosystem as decomposers. They can be parasites, and they can even be mutualists and form symbiotic relationships with other organisms, especially plants. In fact, they play an extremely important role in cycling nutrients and part of the nitrogen cycle, in making sure that soil remains fertile, and they have these associations with plants, either ecto or endomycorrhizal associations, which means the fungi sometimes will actually grow surrounding the plant roots, and sometimes they grow into the plant root itself, almost like a hypodermic needle. And in that way, the plants will give the fungi plenty of sugars, and the fungi give the plants a lot of amino acid-based compounds. Now, fungi have an incredibly important role in our ecosystems. Like I said, they have yeast, which are the single-celled organisms, which are important for things like baking and brewing for human beings. There are the mushrooms that we see sticking out of the ground, some of which are edible, some of which have medicinal purposes. There's penicillin, which is an antibiotic, the first antibiotic ever discovered that kills bacteria that help keep us safe. And of course, there are fungi that are pathogens and can cause things like yeast infections, fungal pneumonia, and thrush. But as I mentioned, fungi can be important nutritionally. And so for those mushrooms that are edible, and please make sure you know which ones are, because for the unedible mushrooms, they can be extremely dangerous. But for those that are, they can be nutrient rich, but also low in calories. They can be high in B vitamins and selenium and copper and potassium, and they have vitamin D as well. They can help support immune system function. They have beta glucans, which are really important. and selenium that can act as antioxidants. They've also been shown to lower cholesterol. They can help regulate blood sugar. Beta glucans can slow digestion and improve insulin sensitivity so you don't have those high insulin spikes after a meal. And they are packed with antioxidants and anti inflammatories, things like glutathione. So let's talk a little bit about how fungi reproduce. Fungi have lots of unique ways in which they can reproduce, both sexually and asexually, and the details can vary among the different types, like the molds, the mushrooms, and yeast. So, first thing here, we've got the asexual side, and that is the spore stage. Fungi begin with spores, which are reproductive cells capable of developing into new organisms. Spores are produced either asexually through mitosis or sexually through meiosis. These spores are highly resistant to harsh conditions. They're easily dispersed by wind in water and animals. Now, once they go through the germination process, this is when a spore lands on a suitable environment. Again, meaning that the moisture is proper, the nutrients are there, the temperature is there, the right pH. It will grow into hyphae if it's multicellular, which are basically those thread-like structures we talked about earlier that make up the body of the fungus, also known as the mycelium. Now, the mycelium can grow, the hyphae are going to branch, and they're going to form new networks of mycelium, which absorbs nutrients from the environment. This stage can be long-lived, with mycelium spreading underground or with an organic material, as I've already mentioned, for miles. At this point, we have plasmogamy on the sexual reproductive side, where it's the cytoplasm of two cells fuse. This will lead to karyogamy, which is basically when the nuclei fuse together to form a diploid zygote. That zygote is then undergoing to go meiosis, and that's going to produce genetically diverse haploid spores. Those spores will then germinate, and the process can start all over again. So as you can see, fungi are really interesting organisms. They are their own kingdom, really diverse from single to multicellular. They can cause disease, they can help us environmentally, and they can enhance human health. As always, thank you so much for being here. Have a great week, everyone.